mentioned Renaissance. Now, you ran that for a couple of years, was it?
Yeah, so Urban Renaissance is a cafe that we opened in the Russell Coates Museum.
Now, why that? That's an unusual venue from where you've been going after Urban Beach's young, hip, Boscombe type people, and then Urban Beach is very much sort of tourism, heavy tourism. Jenkins and Sons is Pen Hill. Yeah. So that's very sort of, I suppose, middle class, you know.
Yeah, it's a different market for us. We were looking specifically for something that didn't have outdoor space, different side of town, different demographic, year-round trade is what we were looking for there to balance out the peaks and troughs that we get of seafront living. But to go back to the Renaissance question, have you been in the Russell Coates Museum?
Yeah.
So it's a really
incredible
cool
building.
space.
It's privately owned, and a guy travelled the world, bringing back
Russell
relics
Coates,
for his wife.
brought back all sorts of gizmos, and I love travel. It was a love story, really, where he donated it to his wife, and they store all of the artefacts from their trips. And I don't think many people go there, and I think it's a stunning building and an amazing location. It's got panoramic views of the sea. It's got nice gardens. We thought we'll do, jazz nights in the gardens. We'll get some nice evening tables, candlelight dinners for two outside in the gardens overlooking the sea. We thought we'd get the nice little conservatory area they've got on the front of the Russell Coates Museum, and we'll do afternoon teas and Prosecco and champagne. And the potential of the building is phenomenal. And for the first year that I was in there, I was super excited every day, telling them about what an amazing building they had and how much we could do with it. And for the second year, I said, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And for the third year, I said, please let me out, because the way that it is it's managed, it's a council operated.
Yes,
And whilst there's a lot of people in the senior level of the council who are quite visionary and really want the town to do well and have lots of great ideas, the people running Urban Renaissance at the time are the only people I've met in my life who sucked out my desire to be a happy, optimistic, entrepreneurial individual.
So there was a time you realised this isn't going to work for me or for
there was a time. There was a time when I was investing a huge amount of energy into it and could see the potential of it. Then there was a time that I went, you know what? I'm now putting a lot of energy into something which is actually, I think I go into a lot of meetings or a lot of venues or a lot of spaces that are either energy giving or energy neutral, and I'm all right with either of those. If they give me energy, I'm super excited and I love it. If they're energy neutral, I can probably cope. Sometimes I need to be the energy in the room, that's okay. But if I go into anything that's energy negative, if it's sucking the energy out of me, then I can only sustain that for a certain period of time.
Being surrounded by
I just don't want to do it.
No people does that, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I delegated it out to one of the guys in the business and a few others. We lost a couple of good managers who we asked to run that venue, and then in the end it was my ops manager Chris, and he and I have worked together for years. And when it was making him want to leave the company, I was like, okay, we need to bin this now. It's just it's that nobody wants to set something up and fail. They don't want to say, it's perceived as failure, but actually the success is in recognizing when something's not working or when it's taking too much energy, even if the potential's there, even if it should work, even if you're super excited about the vision, that seeing what it should be. If at the end of the day it's too hard, there's a limited number of hours in the day, limited resources, limited amount of energy. So if something's taken the energy out of you, bin it, move on and go back to something that gives energy.
And it's quite an unusual ability to be able to put your hand up and go, you know what, we've got to stop this now, because you hear of the sort of, I suppose what you call the traditional sort of alpha male mentality, where people have literally gone to their last penny saying, I'm going to sort this out, I'm going to resolve this, I'm going to turn it round.
Yeah.
And, I suppose to be at a point where you can cut your losses before you're hemorrhaging money, must be a really difficult decision.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's it's partly a pride thing, and it's partly knowing that you deep down you're right. Deep down, this thing that you've created should work. But there's a lot of things that should work that don't for reasons that you don't know. In that one, I could explain the reasons, but there's other things. Even Jenkins and Sons is a challenging business because each business has gone on, we've learnt more about the food and drink and hospitality industry and the things that get us excited. So we get to Jenkins and Sons, and it was an old butchers and fishmongers. So it was called Jenkins and Sons back in the 1920s. We saw this original photo of it back with a very proud artisan butcher and fishmonger stood outside and all the meat and the fish in the window. And we were like, oh, there's a guy who's clearly proud of this amazing produce. And you don't see butchers anymore with all the carcasses kind of hanging in the window. And the frontage of Jenkins and Sons is still the same. It's still the old listed tile building with butchers on one side, fishmongers on the other side. And we were like, we want to kind of grab that history of that artisan pride and work with that. So let's sell meat and fish. And we cook that over charcoal in this Josper grill. But with all the beers, whereas we'd been getting more and more interested in not the products we sell, but the people behind those products, whether it be you know, the guy that provides us with our eggs, or the fishmongers that go out. But these people have all got stories, and they're all interesting characters. So we were like, can we do the same with beer? Because we do it with food. You know, food is predominantly local. We've got our own land out in the forest where we grow stuff. It's quite easy to get fish, you know, caught off the south coast, fish, you know, animal from the farms. But most beer tends to come in from these massive, you know, corporate, huge, multi-million gallon tank, you know, soulless places in the middle of Europe. And we were like, actually, you know, 4 years ago, when we opened it 4.5 years ago, this craft beer revolution, which continues to get momentum now, was in its very early stages. It was probably Brewdog, you know, that started it probably 10 years ago. But even now, you know, I remember the first night, or you know, certainly the first week opening there, and the guy comes in, he said, well, you know, I like it, yeah, I'll come a lot, you know, and I'll spend a couple £100 a week, I like eating out, but I only drink Foster's. And I'm like, look, you know, out of all the beers, so I'm not trying to be a pompous arse, but we're trying to represent people who love making beer, and the hops and the flavours and the passion of a guy that, you know, might arrive to work on a skateboard or whatever, but he just bloody loves beer and he wants to make amazing beer. And I thought, you know, maybe the guy that runs Heineken is like that, but I doubt it. It's probably run by a, you know, corporate board of directors, you know, and a soulless guy. Probably get in touch now and go, actually, no, I come to work on a skateboard and I'm really cool. Like,
so if you're out there, get in touch.
And you're a dude with some tats and a beard and you're a hipster, it's not going to happen, is it? It's going to be an efficient German.
I'd love it if it did. That'd
be cool. It'd be worth this chat just for that. But so I was like, yeah, out of all the beers we do, you know, Foster's isn't going to be the one. But you can't be so arrogant that you're trying to educate people. But you do want to show them that there's a different world out there, and just open your mind and then open your palate and try some flavours and try something interesting. But you can do it in Brighton and in Bristol and in London, but it is harder in Bournemouth and Paul, and I don't know why it is, but there's a number of people that love it, but it's a niche. A lot of people just want what they've always had, you know, and they want to buy the brands and all that kind of stuff.
So you were saying before that it's been fairly difficult to get it to work in Bournemouth and Poole, and my question was, do you think it's part of that is that we have not a particularly huge population, but an incredible range of people? I mean, we've got Sandbanks, one of the most expensive places on earth to buy property, down the road, and then Boscombe, which is quite almost a private area, I suppose you'd call it, and then a huge range of people in between. In such a small area, there can't be enormous numbers of each demographic.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, and I think, you know, that's why you see a lot of stuff that works really well in London. I love going to London. I talk about energy a lot, but you know, the energy that I get walking around London and the concepts that you see there are amazing, and it's, you know, super exciting. But you've also got to recognise that so many things that you see in London won't work because exactly that. You know, there's a niche in London for almost anything you can think of. There'll be enough people that want it. But you do end up, dumbing down's maybe a bit harsh, but you have to be all things to all people to an extent in Bournemouth.
Choose your demographic and then a bit of each side of it as well.
And actually, you know, that can work. So I've always said with our businesses, urban beach, you know, when I look at our menus, and it was almost like some of the food was urban and some of the food was beach. And what I often meant with that, I would say, look, we don't have a particular age group that we aim at. We probably aim at a certain mental state, but you know, I've had an 18th birthday and an 80th birthday in Urban Beach on the same day, and I love that because it's about an attitude. But some of the menu will be, you know, I sort of say, if I come out with my kids and my parents and my grandparents, I want there to be something on the menu that everybody can enjoy. So my granddad only eats fish and chips. You know, that's all he'll eat. Fish and chips and mushy peas. It's all he wants all day long. You know, my wife. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good meal.
Love
you know,
chips.
My dad will have a steak. That's all he wants to have a steak. You know, my wife and I lived in London, so we'll probably actually try anything. You're more an open palate, and my kid will have, you know, beef burger with ketchup and don't put anything that's grown in a field on it. But that's kind of fine. So we always insist.
I'm kind of with him or her.
Yeah, him.
I'm with him on that one.
My daughter doesn't like chips, so she's fish goujons, beans and beans every time. Beans and beans, double beans. But it's kind of, and that's what we aim at. It was like they come out as a family. You know, what we fundamentally sell is time. You know, that's what I do. Is I create time for people to spend with each other. It's not about the drinks.
That's a really nice way of describing it.
But it absolutely is that. I don't mind whether you're coming for a business meeting or an anniversary or a birthday. Fundamentally, what we do is we try and create an environment where human beings still spend time with each other. And I genuinely mean that because, you know, we use social and digital in this virtual world.
I knew you were going to move on to social after that.
Yeah. Well,
to those of you on Facebook who think you've got thousands of friends, go and see some of them face to face.
Yeah, exactly. Get out of this Commonwealth, turn off your sets and get outside. What are you doing watching this nonsense? No, because we use both. You know, I'm a techie. You know, I'm an Apple freak, and I love all the techie world. But when I travelled, you know, the thing that I didn't realise at the time, but when I look back and work out how did I end up in hospitality, is I went around the world for 2 years. And actually the poorest places I went to, you know, you really see humanity at its best. Fundamentally, it's about who you're going to spend time with in the day, where you're going to sleep that evening, and probably what you're going to eat. And that's all we really worry about is you know, sleeping, eating, and who you spend time with. And the poorest places you went to would open their doors. You know, you didn't have language, but what you had is that ability to sit around and they'd pour you a cup of tea and you'd sit around a fire. They might not have any, you know, running water and they're living in mud huts. This is in northern Laos, southern sort of Vietnam, back in 1997. But that warmth and that humanity was amazing. And most people are lovely. You know, genuinely, all we see is this sort of negative propaganda put out by 24-hour news and media. But you know, most people on planet Earth are really decent, bloody lovely people.
No,
and that's all they're worried about. So, you know, the stories and the conversations that I had, and I had a VW camper van and drove around Australia for a year and spent lots of nights sat around a fire in the middle of the desert, and that's where human, you know, stuff happens, the best human stuff,
where we all
the conversation.
started, around a fire together.
Yeah, and I think there's something, it's, you know, we've got the wood oven now with that wood-fired food on the beach, and for me that was that link back to humanity and the fact we've always loved the coast and the beach, and we cook with fire, and that's where food comes from. But all of it is about human connection, you know, and I still think the best human connection, I'm blown away by the fact there might be 7 billion people on planet Earth soon that can all communicate instantaneously with a device in their pocket. I just think it's incredible. But still, I hope we never get out of that thing about sitting around a fire or sitting around a table and drinking some booze and eating some amazing foods. And we're so lucky now that we can drink and eat food from around the world. And that's really exciting. So that's what we do. We create these environments where humans feel relaxed and they create memories and spend time with each other. And the food and the drink is just the lubrication for all of that.
No,
what was the question?
No,
that's the answer.
No. I think that's such a great way of describing it. So you basically create time for people.
That's what we do.
That's an amazing way. I don't think I've ever heard that before. So trying to go through some of these questions.
Yeah, we should at least do one, shouldn't we? We should at least do one.
So we've gone through why you made the jump, and you know, and obviously it was a tough decision, especially as you went to your family. And yeah, I get all of that. But why the B&B? It was just was it just circumstance you came across a B&B that was for sale, or did you actually think, you know what, I could do a restaurant? You talked about the potential of doing a restaurant when you're thinking about the Urban Beach name. It could be a coffee shop one day, it could be this, could be that. Why jump in on the B&B? Because B&Bs run 24/7.
Yeah, they do.
And you know, at least a restaurant at midnight, okay, you've got to clear it up before you open it the next morning. But at least
I
you
didn't
can
know
shut
that
it
at the time, though. It's all great. Have you done this before? Have you lived my life? Because now I look back and go, how did you do that, you idiot? Yeah. Like I say, I'd thought about doing the backpackers. So the backpackers idea was around, you know, I love Bournemouth. I love the fact, you know, New Forest one side, Purbet's the other, the seaside. It's an amazing town. I feel genuinely grateful that I wasn't born in, I'm not going to name any towns, but, you know, somewhere inland and ugly and dull and boring. I'm glad I wasn't
You
born
know who you are.
Yeah, guilty. So you know, the backpackers idea was great, but then when I went up to London and actually started to eat some nice food and drink some nice drinks and start to find out what a plasma telly was and Egyptian cotton linen and have a bit of a life, you know, which you don't get in backpackers. I actually went, you know what, it is about that, it's about the mix. It's like, can we do all the customer service of the backpackers hostel and the informality, but meets this kind of more decadent urban kind of stuff? And then I found this genre of hotels which were called boutique hotels. I've never heard of them, so 12 years ago. And in Brighton, I can't remember the names of them now, but a lot of the research I did led me to these cool boutique hotels in Brighton. And now they're all over the place. And it's a term that probably doesn't get used as much anymore because the big corporates jumped on it and all of a sudden you had 150 bedroom boutique hotels, which is a contradiction.
Yeah, it's an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so now the idea had always been there, but I suppose I didn't think I'd necessarily find the property, and I didn't think that I would be able to raise the money. But having looked around, looked at a coffee shop in Wimborne and looked at various other opportunities, and then this building came up within a sort of price bracket that maybe was in touching distance. And I thought, you know what, it's a corner plot, it's got a bit of outside space. It was back to that vision thing. I thought, you know, yeah, we found the building and then made the idea work for the building, and then thought, yeah, I can make that work, and took the leap. But I didn't, you know, the business plan wasn't that it would become 70, 80% bar restaurant, 20% rooms. You know, the business plan was it was a B&B, you know, it was predominantly rooms. And I certainly didn't plan to do the other businesses.
So it did evolve. There was a plan that took you through the first 6 months, and after that, it just sort of like make it up.
Yeah, if I'd gone to the bank and said, yeah, I'm going to open a seafront restaurant, a B&B, you know, wood-fired oven, a carpet, they would have literally thought, you know, I'm bonkers. And to be fair, I see people now who say, you know, oh, we're going to open 4 restaurants, and that's their business plan. They come in and straight away, I'm going to open 4 restaurants, and then I'm going to franchise it, and then there'll be 50, and that's where they start. I'm like, open one.
Yeah.
You know, just open
Get
one.
it right.
Yeah, and just because it's really difficult. You know, people think the margins are massive in restaurants, but you know, Urban Beach for 3 years. You know, in 2 years I had 5 days off, including weekends, and that was only because I got married. So 3 of those days, I still owe my wife a honeymoon. Because luckily she'd already agreed to get married before I started the B&B. I said, it'd be lovely, come down to Bournemouth, we're doing this nice lifestyle business, little B&B by the coast. You know, we'll hold hands and walk along in the sea. It'll be delicious. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Eve, you know, she was washing glasses and plates from a New Year's Eve party and going, this isn't what I signed up for. But yeah, a bonkers, you know, 2 years. Even up to probably 5 years, I was absolutely, you know, I couldn't physically go back and work as hard as I did work back then. So it very much evolved.